Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start our Saturday class with some prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhavaswaha, Tatsavitravarenayam, Bargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Nah Prachodayat, Asto Ma Sadgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityurma Amritam Gamya. ओम सहनावतु सहनाभुनक्तु सवीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्वी नावधीतमस्तु मा विद्वेषावहै ओम शांति 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 So Yog Darshan chapter 3 Vibhutipad. These verses we are going through, there are two things. One is that if we have been practicing, we can really have a little glimpse of these vibhutis. And if we have not gotten the glimpse, it should encourage us to practice more. So these vibhutis are just to get a little glimpse. Yeah, my sadhana is working. Not to show off these vibhutis or the powers, just to get encouraged here and there. That is for our own progress. So that's the reason Rishi Patanjali put them over here in this beautiful short scripture. So last week, in verse number 21, he said, by performing Samyama on the form of the body and suspending receptivity of the form, there being no contact between the eye and the light, the yogi can become invisible. And we learned about the Samyama, what Samyama is. Samyama is when we do dharana, dhyana, and samadhi at one place. Okay, we choose that particular, either it's a sound or form or sight, and we do Samyama on that. So that's why he said performing Samyama on the form of the body. Okay, you can suspend the receptivity of that form. And we were talking about there are 5 tanmatras, the subtle forms of the elements, and we can do in any one of them. Okay, so this definitely involves meditation, a deeper level of meditation, and going into the samadhi. Senses have the capacity to apprehend their respective objects, but can apprehend themselves only with the aid of the mind. So senses alone cannot do anything. They got to be connected with the mind. So in this particular verse, he says the power to perceive in the eyes through the mind and then disconnecting it. So the aspect of the phenomenal world that has form and size is made up of matter and energy. It is visible because it is charged with the graha shakti. You remember last week I told you graha shakti, grahak shakti, and grahana shakti. 3 kinds of powers. So it's visible because it's charged with the graha shakti, the power to be perceived. So in material objects, the power to perceive and the power to carry out perception are significantly subdued. I will find this 1 second. Our body is made up of matter and energy. How are you? It has form. We perceive the form of our body because it is more than an aggregate of matter and energy. It is intelligent entity. The physical frame of our body is definitely saturated with the senses and different faculties of our mind. So that's why the threefold essence the power to perceive, power to be perceived, and power to carry out the process of perception. It just keeps on flowing in various aspects of our being. But it happens so spontaneously that we really don't pay much attention to it. But remember, take your mind towards the first part of this chapter. And when we talked about that we can deepen our meditation, deepen our practice with the help of the flow of the breath. That's how we train our mind. So training the mind to transcend the physical aspect of breathing also. See, we connect our mind with the breath, then transcend that also. That's how we become aware of our non-physical pranic counterpart of our breath, which we called energy, pran. Only then we can unite our mind with this pranic flow and allow our mind to follow the pranic current between the opening of the nostrils and the center of the forehead. And then there's a union between the mind and the breath, which is firmly established. Okay, so that's why in order to really comprehend these verses about the powers, we got to continuously do our sadhana also. This is not just something we read about or listen. This is something we got to do. The unique point between our eyebrows, the middle of the forehead, that is like a center between the eyebrows, the inner corners of the eyes, opening of the nostrils, the point in space about few fingers width away from the opening of the nostrils. Just continuously keep our attention there. You will see that by practicing, you will understand that these are not just words alone. There's a great power inherent inside us. Great power which we don't pay much attention to. So the very important to remember that we got to practice and daily practice. You remember in the first chapter when he said abhyas and vairagya? Abhyas. This is called abhyas. Okay. So abhyas for a long time, long term, and with faith also, full faith. So the next verse, which is verse number 22, that is just his talking about the disappearance of the tanmatras. So first he talked about the body, but he says the others also, sound, etc. You can transcend those too. He says, etena shabdadyantardhanamuktam. Etena means by this. So that means by Samyama. Practice. Shabad adi, sound and others. Antardhanam, disappearance. Uktam said. So by what has been said, the disappearance of sound and other tanmatras can be understood. And what is a tanmatra? Tanmatras are the powers of these sense objects also and the senses also. Tanmatra. So by practicing Samyam on your own form, you can make yourself invisible. So now in this sutra, the same manner he says, by performing Samyam on sound, on touch, on taste, etc., those faculties can be made to disappear. So yogi can stop other sensations also, control the phenomena concerning them. See, all our life, we just get so attracted only with the physicality of this life, whether our own body, bodies of others, or the objects. The practice of yoga takes us towards the subtler part and then ultimately to the subtlest part. And what is the subtlest? The Atma, the soul, which is part of God. When we say God is everywhere, by these practices, we can see God. We can feel the presence of that higher energy with us all the time. But we have to separate ourselves from the grosser in order to get connected with the subtle. So now, in the next verse, verse number 23, he's talking about the knowledge of the time of death, which is very intriguing to all of us because we know that we have to leave this body. We would like to know when I'm going to leave. Just like everything else we like to have in our control. Yogi has that death also in his control. How? He says, sopakraman, nirupakraman, chakaram, tatsanyamad, aparantajnanam, arishtebhyo va. Sopakraman, the karmas with activity. Nirupakraman, the karma that is dormant. Cha means and, karam means action, tat means that. Sanyamat, by performing sanyama. Aparant, death. Jnanam, knowledge. Arishtebhyo, by omens. Va means or. He says karma is of two kinds, active and dormant. So sopkram and nirupkram. By performing sanyam on them, knowledge of death is gained. And also by omens, he says, by omens. So sopakram means that karam which has started giving its fruits. And nirupakaram, which is dormant at present, would be exhausted after some time. This is another terminology. The first kind of karam is also called prarabdha. And the second kind is called sanchit. I'm sure most of you are familiar with these terms, prarabdha and sanchit. Sanchit means which are remaining in the storehouse. It's just like there's a silo and we have seeds over there and you take some out. The one you take out, those are called sopkram. The one which are left behind in the silo, they are called nirupkaram, sanchit. But actually we also talk about their karmas can be divided in three. So kriyaman, the current karmas also, where do they fall? It has to go into the, most of them got to go into the nirupakaram, the one which we are doing. That's why often we don't see the result of our actions right away. But by performing sanyam on these two types of karma, the active and the dormant, the death can be known beforehand. That's what he's telling us. Remember, birth and death of this body are the effects of karmas. And if we can do sanyam on karam, we can know when there will be death. And there have been many cases in the history. But then he says there's another way of knowing the time of the death, which is called arishtha. See, arishtebhyo, by arishtha, by knowing the arishtha. People can know the death even in 6 months in advance. There are several places in the scriptures these techniques have been mentioned. There are certain symptoms you can look for. They say not be able to look at your nose. Not seeing the left ear when you look at the shadow. Not seeing the shadow at all. There are several omens are mentioned in the scriptures. These are called arishtebhyo, and it's studied in different parts of yoga. This is called a swar yoga, chaya upasana. So this is one way to know. So main emphasis in this verse is on our karmas. Because when we are going through the karma, when we are doing the karma, creating the karma, only then we have a control. Our karmas and sanskars, they bring us back into this phenomenal world. So if you want to know why we are here, because of our karmas we are here. Our karmas determine when and where we are born. That's called a jati. As a human being, as a bird, as an animal, how long will remain alive? Are you? We learned that in the previous chapter, actually. And major course of our life experiences also. Bhog. So he said jati, ayu, bhog. These are the Sanskrit words he used. And what are the sanskars? Those are the subtle impressions deposited in our mind by our actions, which are numberless. Numberless. That's why we don't even know. But as a yoga student, we pay more and more attention to the current karma. Because we know that the current karma is the only one which is in our hands. But by making our mind more and more simple, we can see what we did in the past also. Why did I come into this body? Why I'm going through the certain bhog. Bhog means enjoyment also. Bhog could mean the suffering also. Some sanskars are extremely significant, others less. And the most significant are those that are qualitatively intense, and they play a central role in bringing us back to this world. The other rishis, they called these pradhan also, principal sanskars, pradhan. And those which are less intense, of the similar nature, he called them upasarjani bhav. So if you are studying other books, you will see this terminology also, the secondary sanskars, upasarjani bhav. But most of the time, the secondary sanskars, they are enmeshed with the primary also, and we get very confused. Because two sets of sanskars, they work in tandem. This phenomenal world where we are living, we have everything we need to find fulfillment actually. And what constitutes fulfillment is defined by the desires and cravings inherent in our sanskars, which is entirely personal. One person could be very satisfied with something very little, very simple. The other person is not. They want more and more. These inherent desires and cravings motivate us to select ingredients from our parents, our surroundings, that are compatible with the most subtle and potent urges embedded in our sanskars. That's why we are born in different homes at different places. And also, while living in the same household as our siblings, who are consuming the same food, exposed to the same influences, we develop our own unique physical, intellectual, emotional capacities. Because there's so much we have brought from the past, countless lives. That's why that debate between the nature and the nurture. Parents do the nurturing the same way. But from the past, that nature which we have brought is immense. Our deep-seated sanskars, their underlying urges, they shape our personality. We build the foundation for our likes and dislikes. We even define our ideas of pleasure and pain, good and bad, healthy and unhealthy. It's a very complicated mind of ours. That's why this Raj Yoga or the yogic sadhana is mainly about the mind. Because there are potent urges, they arise from our sanskars. And the cascade of conditions that ensue influence our tastes and interests. Sometimes they can elevate us, but sometimes they can suppress our capacity also. They dictate our behavior, our set of priorities. In fact, they prepare the ground for us to consume the sap of life, either wisely or recklessly. We have that option. Sanskars are the most significant factors in determining how long we'll live and how we will live. Karmas and sanskars that drain the sap of life and eventually lead to our damage. That's what he's mentioning in this one, sopakraman and nirupakraman. So accompanied by consequential factors and supported by these secondary sanskars. So nirupakraman means secondary karmas, not active in service right now. But still they have the effect of it because they are in there. They are dormant, but still at certain level they do affect us. Because as soon as they wake up, begin assisting the principal karmas, the sopakraman, they will become the integral part of our karma. A yogi with a highly concentrated mind is able to identify the group of karmas and sanskars very clearly. So this is what he's talking about in this, that vibhuti, that power a yogi has with this practice. So this knowledge pertaining to his approaching death helps him decide whether it's worth living a while longer. It's almost like in a house where we are living. If it's falling apart, the owner will say, should I fix it or should I move out? Or a bridge going over the streets, they look at it. They decide, are the pillars strong enough for a few years or not? That is what yogi does. So these powers are not to judge others. These powers are, hey, keeping in mind that I have to reach my ultimate goal and this body has been given to me as a tool. And there are sanskars in there. I need to roast all those seeds. Can I roast them while staying in this body? Or should I let go of this body and move on? Yogi is very clear about it. That whether it's worth living a while longer, or whether it's better to prepare to exit. Yogi very properly plans and in a very dignified manner leaves the body. When Yogi sees no merit in prolonging life, Yogi resorts to Aroha. Aroha means ascending current of Pran Shakti, and leaves this body. Several yogis, they have done it. They don't advertise, but this is the sadhana. But we are familiar with that very famous epic Mahabharat, Bhisham Pitama. He stayed on that bed of arrows for months because he knew that ascending time has not reached yet. With the help of bhakti, with the help of trustful surrender, Yog Shakti, a yogi can unite the forces of the mind and pran all the way towards the Dasham Dwar. Or you can call it a Sahasar Chakra. So the practice described in this sutra, you can see that it relates only to the accomplished yogis. This is not something fictitious. This is we all can practice and understand this life, why we are here, what are we supposed to do. There are some good results we are reaping and some not so good. But we got to take charge, take ownership of our karmas. These are our karmas. We are the one who did them. Remember, a skilled practitioner uses this information either to prolong the life, to complete the sadhana, or to methodically cast off the body without dying helplessly. And what happens to that yogi? Retains the privilege of creating the future destiny also. Where to go? Where the sadhana can start, where he left off. But those of us who are not well established in yoga sadhana can definitely adopt a set of practices and get encouraged from all this. We can spend our remaining life in this healthiest manner possible and deploy all our spiritual, intellectual, and worldly resources to serve the larger world. We got to understand this is the time to drop all disputes and instill in the mind the virtues of friendliness, compassion, joy, and most importantly, a non-judgmental attitude. He has been talking about it, and in the next verse, he's repeating it again. Because we have not reached there yet. Sorry about this. I'm sure you can hear me now, right? Okay, sorry about that. So these Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha, these are the words you are familiar with. In English, they are friendliness, compassion, joy, and non-judgmental attitude. At least we can live a life keeping these attitudes in our mind. And if we can see the omens appear, that we got to leave this body, do not be afraid. We got to realize that the origin of life force is far beyond the domain of the material world. We should shift our attention and loyalty from our material and emotional possessions to the reality that gives birth to the life force itself. So instead of thinking that, God, I got to leave everything behind, that's attachment to the material world. The same mind you can attach to that higher force. During this limited time, our body, mind, and senses may be fragile. They are unfit to undertake any methodical practice to further strengthen our bond with the higher reality. But based upon our current knowledge, conviction, we can definitely organize a practice, sometimes with a group of people, or sometimes just ourselves or with the family, or just act of charity, promoting peace, nurturing Mother Nature, expressing our gratitude to nature through this time of transition. Okay, so all of us will not know the omens, but we got to cultivate these good qualities in us. That's how we keep on increasing the quality of our karmas. Good karmas, they'll take us to a good place. Not so good karma, they will bring us back to the bad place. So it's in our hands. That we have the steering wheel of our life in our hands. Then in the next verse, which I just already mentioned it to you, very clearly he is telling us to cultivate these qualities. So focus more on these. Maitri, Adishu, Balani. Maitri means friendliness. Adishu means etc. So the other three. Balani means powers. By performing Samyam on friendliness, etc., there come those particular powers. So these four tendencies that a yogi cultivates. You can go back to the first chapter. But now you have learned that living a life of a tapasvi, doing the practice of yoga, and especially taking your practice to that Samyam level and concentrate on these four tendencies, certain powers can be developed. Actually, Rishi Patanjali has mentioned these four several times before. So that must be so important. So important to have these virtues of compassion, joyfulness, non-judgmental attitude, and the first one is friendliness. First time it was mentioned in chapter 1, verse number 33. You should go back, revisit these verses. Then in Sutra, in the second chapter, Sadhana Pad, he mentioned again. So you can go there too. So the process and purpose of practicing Samyam on the virtues of friendliness is completely different from what has come before, actually. Okay? It's just like you keep on deepening and deepening your practice. First, only in our relationships we look at it. Then we dig deeper into our mind, dig deeper into our sanskars. That's why he's mentioning it again and again. Because friendship between friends is based on friendly feelings and interactions. It is two-sided, abstract, and comprehending the exact strand of our own friendly feeling is difficult. Because in the society, sure, we'll say we are friends. If they invite us, we invite them, we give them gift, they give us gift, they talk nicely to us, we talk nicely to them. So it's an interaction between two people. But over here, he's talking about our own friendly feelings, which is definitely difficult. Let alone comprehending the friendly feelings of our friends. So practicing concentration and friendliness and taking it all the way to samadhi, it takes practice. So he's really telling us by doing this, you can cultivate very extraordinary qualities in you, or the capacities. Following the rules of mental absorption as described earlier, as our mind dissolves into the object of our focus, it really becomes infused with those properties of that object. To what degree the properties such as friendliness and compassion are going to manifest by practicing Samyama on the beings who embody these virtues will always be in proportion to the maturity of the practice. So it is important to remember that this practice, like many to come, posits the attainment of a highly concentrated mind, highly clean mind also. If the mind is not clean, there cannot be a virtue of a friendliness in there. The mind, the kind of a mind which protects us from falling in the trap of blind faith. The kind of a mind enables us to deconstruct a variety of emotions associated with the person who's the object of the Samyama. So that means we are no longer smeared by the negativities or the afflicting qualities. We got to keep on working on those also. You remember the afflictions? Avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesh. We got to clean those also from our mind. Once there's a clean mind, concentrated mind, sheer intention alone is enough to bring forward the hidden powers in us. These are the powers: friendliness, compassion, and other related virtues. So they are inherently in us, but we have just covered them with the negativity. So with this yogic sadhana, we can bring this all out. That's what Rishi Patanjali is talking about. Just with the Samyama. With the Samyama. Okay, Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. So remember that Adi word, etc. over here means the other three. Now in the next verse, we'll see next week how by doing Samyama on some animal which is so strong. Over here, he's talking about elephant. Samyam all the powers of the elephant. You become as strong as an elephant. And when we read our epics, whether it was one of the Pandavas, Bhim, or whether it was Lord Krishna himself, when the drunkard elephant was sent by Kansa, he could control him. But Bhim also, he could just pick the elephant with one hand and just swirl around and send it to the sky also. So that's what Rishi Patanjali is talking about. Baleshu hasti bal adhine. And not just these two examples, there are several examples. Little children, young yogis playing with the lions, tigers, controlling them. This kind of a bal, this kind of a strength. So we'll go through this next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.